Back we are. I'm Ernie Anastos. We're live here on News Talk Television, and today we're talking about a racial comment that was made by a president of a large university here in the Northeast, and it has set up a firestorm of protest. The president of New Jersey's largest and only state university is trying to convince students and politicians and other people that the racial comments he made were misunderstood. And this latest issue, latest incident, I should say, raises the issue of racism in America and what's going on in our college campuses. Has racism increased or decreased over the years? Let's continue with this now. Joining us is Alex Norman, a student at Rutgers University. He is one of many students who wants the president to resign for the comment that he made. Alex, why is it so important that the president quit?
Well, for starters, we feel that that his comments that he made, that he felt, well, actually that he believed in what he said. Okay, we don't buy his apology, because anybody who's a race or anyone who's not a racist, and they would never entertain such thoughts. Me personally speaking, I could never conceive of saying something like that, as far as, you know, well, blacks are genetically inferior, because I don't even entertain those thoughts. So that's how we feel. We feel that he meant what he said.
Okay, understood what you're saying. However, there are people who will say, let's also take a look at this man's track record. While he was at Tulane University and certainly at Rutgers University, he has worked, and the record shows, to help a number of minority students. He has moved a number of minority people into administrative positions. He has this 3-year, $5 million plan to help minorities at the State University. What about that record?
Well, I mean, we have our own record as well. I mean, we've done research on our own. Since Lawrence has been at Rutgers University, tuition has gone up 64%. Okay, that's 4 times the going rate of inflation right there, which, you know, hurts us minorities, you know, the most. I
understand that, but that may be construed as a separate issue.
Okay,
though, okay, Alex.
Well,
I mean, specifically in terms of what he has or has not done to help the minority community at Rutgers University.
The
fact
fact is, every program that we've had at Rutgers, you know, we have a Latino Cultural Center there. We have the Paul Robeson Cultural Center there. That was all done by students who protested for those centers. He didn't just give us, you know, those centers because, you know, out of the kindness of his heart, or because, you know, he was really interested in us seeing us realize those centers. It wasn't, you know, something that he just gave us, that he was, you know, that was in his plan.
Do you and I don't know how many other students, do you think that President Lawrence is a racist? Would you call him a racist?
Yes, I do.
You do.
It just shows the sort of thanks that you get. Years, decades spent trying to help blacks, and this is the thanks he gets for one stepping over the line just once. There's a lesson for this. At some point, people are just going to get fed up.
Jim, you're kind of like in between on all of this, aren't you?
I could go back when I was at City College in the latter part of the 40s. There was a major student strike. We closed City College down because there were professors like this guy here. And it had the support of the white students. As a matter of fact, a lot of the white students were in the leadership there.
This was back in when? When did you say 1940?
Racism.
When was this, 1940?
About 1947, 48.
Okay, and
at City College of New York.
And you had the support of most of the white students.
Because they wanted to get rid of professors like this kind of a racist.
How much?
They wanted to get rid of him. And as a result, for about 3 or 4 days, literally, the school was closed down.
Alex, how much support do you have? I mean, from the white student population.
Well,
at
I want to get like one thing clear. It's not. You see, the media's been trying to portray this as a black-white issue. It's not a black-white issue. It's a social issue. It's something that in our generation that we cannot tolerate, because if we look, even now in the audience, everybody is you know, Indian, black, Hispanic, you know, Oriental, whatever. It's, you know, we're trying to move ahead with a society that's changing very rapidly, and comments that such as Lawrence's only sets us back. You know, and as I mean, you don't have to be black. I mean, I personally feel you should not have to be black to be offended by the comments. If you're just a person, if you're white.
Let me get to the phones right now. Joining us right now on the telephone is WABC radio talk show host Lionel. Lionel, you've been on listening to us now as this discussion has developed. What are your listeners telling you? What are they saying about this issue right now?
Well, to summarize it, perhaps the best way would be to say much ado about nothing. What is interesting is that Mr. Lawrence said something that he later retracted. rescinded, revoked. This was a statement that was made during a faculty meeting, not in an address, not a part of Rutgers policy. After it was brought to his attention, he said, I rescind it. I retract. I have nothing to do with this statement anymore. I made a mistake. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't know what he's supposed to do other than that. What is interesting and what people fail to realize is the context of the entire statement. He was talking about the elevation, perhaps, of SAT scores, raising standards, as people call it. And what he said was, statistics will show. In fact, Alex Norman, whom we interviewed on my show, admitted such, that minorities, whatever that is, whatever that group is, tend to do less well on standardized SAT tests than others. Now, that's just a fact, regardless of the reason. I'll let others debate that. So what he said was, if you were to raise these standards, you, in essence, would be precluding and disenabling minorities from attending Rutgers, which is a pro-minority state.
Well,
it's that last...
Lionel, just a moment before you continue, just a minute. We have a little disagreement here. Are you saying that you didn't say that, Alex?
I didn't say everything else that he said. I mean, the fact is, yes, that the essay that minorities do score 750, that I didn't go on and elaborate on what he just said.
I never said you did, Alex. Listen carefully. I never said you did. What you said was, now this is hysterical. What Alex and his cohorts want as far as, I guess, reparation for the statement is the lowering of tuition. Now, what this has to do with anything, I have no idea. Then he wants to eliminate SATs. When I asked Alex, why do you want to do that? He said because SATs do not adequately and fairly and accurately reflect minority student capabilities, because he conceded they do poorer. So what Mr. Lawrence was arguing is what Alex is arguing. Nobody's listening to what this man said. The only thing that we're interested in is this post-bell curve hysteria.
Yeah, but I think Alex is saying more than that. Alex is dealing with the whole subject of motivation. Black students, African-American students, Latin American students who come out of a cycle of poverty where their motivation has been beaten down, do not come to the SAT test or to that university with the same motivation that the white student comes from, who's had the benefit of a decent community, full employment, nice housing, all the amenities of good economic life.
Lionel, go ahead. We're listening.
Ernie,
yes, go ahead, Lionel.
Everyone is so in love with the protest and so in love with this designer militant that we're not even listening to what this man said. He proposed a program which would help minority education. But for Alex and members of his so-called coalition to agree to this, to recognize this, would mean that they would have to forego the apparent fun they're having by protesting. This man has done... You're arguing racism with the wrong person.
Lionel, hold up 1 second
One more point, if I could.
Yeah.
Charles Barkley, over the weekend, made a comment. I know he's a sports star.
Yeah.
He's a black sports star. He said, I'm sorry, I was kidding. What is it in this day and age where we can never take anything back? Do you think George Wallace ever said, I'm sorry, I was misunderstood? A racist never apologizes, never explains. He stands by what he says.
I understand. I understand what you're saying, because we were talking about that. In fact, just before we went on the air, you and I were having this discussion.
I think we lose sight of the fact that racism in this country is at an all-time high. People believe that racism has gone away. That is not the case. There's more racism in this country now.
What's the evidence?
Just look at the data. Look at the data in terms of the rate of unemployment, the homelessness. Who gets a good job?
What does that got to do with racism?
Discrimination.
How do you know it's due to discrimination?
Because when I go to get a job and you go to get a job, you're a white guy, you get the preference, I don't, because you're white. Has nothing to do with your intelligence. As a matter of fact, you're probably even ignorant, and you still get the job.
How do you know that's got nothing to do with qualifications?
What qualification?
Lionel, before we let you go.
Yes, sir.
You certainly have been listening to your viewers, to your listeners, I should say. What are they saying? Should the president of Rutgers resign, or should he stay on?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Let me ask you something. Explain to me or explain to anyone.
Right.
First of all, this coalition and whom they represent.
Lionel, let me just interrupt
me.
you for 1 second. You can understand this. I've got to take a break, but I want you to stay on the line. Will you stay with us?
Certainly.
Okay, you stay on because Alex also has to respond to what you were saying, and I want you to finish. We'll be back with more of this discussion right after these messages. Don't go away. We're back. I'm Ernie Anastos. We're live here on News Talk Television, and today the issue is campus racism. Are American college educators racist? Well, the issue focuses on Rutgers University in New Jersey after its president made some comments that many students perceive as racist. Many students want him to step down. Others disagree. What do you think? We want your opinion. Right now on the line with us is Lionel from WABC Radio. Lionel, before our break, I had asked you what kind of response you were getting from your listeners, and I asked you if they wanted the president of the university, President Lawrence, to step down or to stay in, and you say the majority of them say, no, he should stay there. Is that what they're saying?
The majority are saying he should stay there because he's done everything he is supposed to do or could do. What about Leonard Jeffries? Let's talk about him for a moment. You know, the idea, this is a person who said repeatedly, over and over again, something which I think is protected speech. What is amazing to me is that in that particular case, it was understood. I don't see any black activists calling for his ouster because they happen to agree with him. What this man did is say something in the course of a conversation which he says he does not believe. What does he have to do? If you want to see racism, look at your panel. You've got Levin here who's talking about studies. I haven't heard anybody from Stephen Jay Gould to anybody who agrees with this Shockley type of eugenics genetics theory. You've got a so-called activist who keeps stirring the pot, and you've got a clueless student who's asking for things that have nothing to do with the controversy.
Jim, I know you want to say something because you're just pointing and saying, let me talk.
Yeah,
you want to respond to what he said? He brought up Jeffries?
Yes. I mean, he sounds like he's stirring the pot. What I'm attempting to address is the fact that at Rutgers, at every major educational institution in this country, indeed in the American society, you have systemic racism. It's historical. Recall when the founding fathers were writing the Constitution, before they made studies such as my friend here has made, they declared that black folk were 3/5 of a man. 3/5. Now, what is that?
The Supreme Court said that, not the
racist
founding
mentality, racist ideology. That's basically what we're addressing here, and it is reflected in the vast discrepancy in terms of opportunity and living conditions between black America and white America. That has been documented so much that I don't even need talk about.
What does it have to do with Francis Lawrence?
The simple fact
Lionel,
is...
thank you very much for being with us.
The simple fact is...
Appreciate your comments, okay? And when we do come back, a man who says the professor at Rutgers has nothing to apologize for. He was just speaking pure facts. We'll continue in just a moment.
Spoke. I jumbled my words. I mean, you've heard what I've said before on it. Every single human being on this earth has done it at least once in his or her lifetime.
All right, that comment set up an incredible protest at the campus of Rutgers University. As you well know, many of you have been watching our program. That was the president of Rutgers University, Francis Lawrence, and he noted in a speech that blacks score below the national average on standardized tests. He was talking about the SAT scores because of their genetic hereditary background. Now people are saying that he should step down, that he should be removed from his position. The college president has apologized, but some say that that is not enough. It has stirred up the controversy right now about what's going on in our college campuses. Let's continue with our discussion. And joining us in the studio is Nigel Innes from the Congress of Racial Equality. He says that he is sick and he is tired of the anger and the rage of blacks. He also says if you're going to protest this issue, then be prepared to give up all of the affirmative action benefits. First of all, Nigel, we wanted to make sure that this was clear. You think that the president of Rutgers should apologize, first of all, for what he said,
and he
right?
should resign, too.
And he should resign. Okay, why don't you tell us how you feel about that?
I'll tell you why. It is very easy to call this man a racist. I mean, he's an idiot. I mean, it was a dumb statement. I mean, for a president of a university that has geneticists, that has biologists, that has sociologists under him, working for him, to make a statement that's patently fraudulent and false is dumb. But it's very easy to call him a racist. What is a little more difficult, and what we really have to think about, is if this guy, if his premise is racist, if his idea that blacks are genetically inferior intellectually is racist, isn't his implementation of certain programs to benefit blacks also racist as well? And I think a lot of students, okay, on the one hand, are going to be very easy to call, make a shot real easy and say he's a racist. On the other hand, accept some of the affirmative action programs that say the very same thing.
Alex, what did you want to say?
Yeah, that's the whole thing too behind it is that, you know, that's the rationale that he's using as far as approaching policies that concern blacks and Latinos and other minorities. And, you know, and that's how we feel. It's like, how can you have somebody making decisions for us who, you know, who has those sentiments?
And I call it Charles Murray, and as you know, Charles Murray wrote the bell curve.
Yes.
He's the flip side of Charles Murray. They both believe and say the same thing. The only difference is the president is the Charles Murray with a conscience. He believes we're intellectually inferior. He just wants to do something about it. All right? I think the premise is wrong. It is fraudulent. It is wrong. It is erroneous. But I also think programs that somehow want to disproportionately affect or help blacks because of the same premise that we can't compete is also wrong. And I think that students will be done a great disservice going into this more and more competitive world that we live in if this guy stays on board.
Well, here's the thing, because Jim, I want to go back to you, because you and I mentioned this before, had a brief discussion before we went on the air. We're talking about people who perhaps make a mistake, but who go on and really do the job. We're using the president of Rutgers University as an example. You somehow agreed with what we were talking about, that perhaps you take a man like this, who is doing what he has to do or wants to do or whatever, and if you leave him in that position, he'll do a better job. That he will learn, he will grow, and he will develop, and so will everybody, rather than...
I have a real ambivalence here.
Yeah, you do.
I feel if he is really sincere in apologizing for having made such a stupid, ridiculous statement, and if he's sincere about acting on it, and really sitting down and talking to people like Alec and the other student leaders out there to work out an agenda that they will put forth, then perhaps I would temper my anger somewhat and let that process proceed. But you can't escape the point that Nigel just made, that the man did make a gross error by articulating basically what he really feels.
Yes, go ahead. I want to get a comment here.
This was going back to what one of them said in the very beginning about Asians score better than whites, etc. Wouldn't that be more socio-cultural? Their parents pushed them so
Absolutely.
hard.
I think you're absolutely right. I think it's a question of culture. Yeah. It's a question of burning the midnight oil. I suggest that Professor Levin, who's also erroneous, all right, should go back into ancient Rome and find that Romans and ancient Egyptians, who were at the very least a mixed population, had a higher IQ, by whatever measure they used back then, than the barbaric Germans, blonde-haired, blue-eyed Germans, or the barbaric British who painted their faces blue.
Professor Levin, you make a point here?
The important thing, at least in the 20th century, is that the gap between Asians and whites and blacks is largest on the nonverbal parts of these tests, the mathematical reasoning, the abstract spatial reasoning, the tests that are least influenced by culture and by society.
Absolutely. Math portion of the SATs, math or science or any course, is absolutely based on culture. It's absolutely based on social factors, in that if you burn the midnight oil, if your culture says that you have to study a certain number of hours per week and other culture says that you don't, then yes, that person who studies, who burns the midnight oil and studies math and science is going to be better prepared.
Okay, on the line right now. I want you to listen to this. On the telephone, I'd like you to meet Rochelle Brown. She is a former Rutgers University student. Rochelle, thank you for joining us. When did you graduate?
I graduated in 1993.
Okay. How do you feel about what's going on now? How do you feel about what's happening at your alumni?
Well, when I was at Rutgers, I was a very, very active student, and I hear people on your panel like Lionel, and he only sees one picture. But ever since Lawrence came to the university, he was never, ever, ever like a vocal president. He has never been one to come out, get involved in the community, and to say something like this is just like a Freudian slip. He said it. He meant it. Now he has to apologize, which he did, but it has to be taken serious. People just can't get away with saying these things, and he's looking at it like, oh, it's just the president of Rutgers. Tomorrow it could be the president of the United States, and we must stand up as a whole for ourselves and everybody. He did say minorities, so we need to stand up for ourselves.
You think that he should resign then? You think he should step down?
Yes, because he can't say this and get away with it, because it places a stigma on myself and other students who also graduated from Rutgers that, we're not able to compete. Now every job interview I go on and where I go, oh, you went to Rutgers, where the president said you were basically not even, you almost let in. You really couldn't compete.
Is that how you feel, Rochelle?
Yes.
You feel that you're at a disadvantage with regard to what you're saying with SAT scores and how you're being viewed as a student, former student at Rutgers University.
Right.
Okay, just a minute. Wait. Alex wants to say something.
The fact is about this whole issue of discrimination, and this is all in the bell curve, by the way, that when you control for IQ, black income is just as high as whites, and on most criteria, when you control for qualifications, blacks do better. For example, you get into law school if you're black with a much lower LSAT than a white would. You get into medical school with a much lower MCAT than a white would. This is true for salary scales. It's true across the board. So not only is there not discrimination, when you control for qualifications and ability, blacks do consistently better than whites.
Okay. Rochelle, I want you to stay on the line. I do want you to respond to what's being discussed here. And when we come back, a man who says, give the president of Rutgers University a break. Let's look at his merit rather than one statement that he made. We'll continue our discussion right after these messages on News Talk Television. Stay with us and give us a call. All right, back we are, and a racial comment, a racial remark sets off a firestorm of protest on a college campus. It is the president of New Jersey's largest and only state university, Francis Lawrence, who is trying to convince students and politicians and a number of other people that the racial comment that he made were misunderstood. The latest incident, of course, raises the issue of racism in America. Has it gotten worse? Has it gotten any better? I want to go back for a moment to Rochelle Brown, who is a member of the alumni at Rutgers University. Rochelle, what do you think that you could do right now about this situation? Do you plan to get involved? I know that you also have a sister who's an undergraduate there. Is that correct?
Yes, I do. I do plan on getting involved, and some of my other colleagues who also graduated, because it's people like us that have to go back and make sure that future generations are going to be okay and taken care of. And back to Lionel making comments towards, yes, these things are here, and, we might get into law school at lower SAT rates. All that may be well, but you have to go back to the beginning of the problems. And if we're going to be attending schools where some schools put $7,000 a class into investing into resources for classes versus other places that may put $7,000 a student, of course, we're all working at disadvantage functions here, but you cannot say something like this and get away with it, because it hurts everybody. And like Alex said, as a whole, whether you are minority, white, black, whatever, everybody has to see that something's wrong here.
Okay.
You just can't say that and get away with it.
Yeah. Rochelle, I want to thank you for joining us. Alex wants to make a comment.
I'd like to elaborate on a point that she made earlier. And the fact is that, as a black parent or as a Latino parent, why would you want we have to look at Rutgers' reputation and the future of Rutgers. Why as a black parent or as a Latino parent, why would you want to send your student, your son or daughter to Rutgers when you know that the president of that university purports those type of ideas?
Why don't you go elsewhere then? Why don't you set up your own university?
But you don't understand this, that Rutgers University.
Well, why don't you go someplace?
Yeah.
Joining us right now.
You are complaining.
And joining us right now is attorney Robert Gould. He says that this is a form situation over substance issue, and we should not penalize the president over one slip of the tongue.
Exactly, Ernie. The problem here is that you have to, when you have great controversy and great emotion, there's no doubt that what President Lawrence said was wrong. It came out wrong, and he should be brought up as he has been, but not this way. You don't disrupt an entire school's basketball game. You don't seek to fire a man over 3 words. You investigate him because he's given you cause for investigation. He has not given you cause to get him dismissed. What do I mean by that? You have to look at this man's career as an educator. Has he shown any indication at any other time other than these 3 words of being a racist? Has he shown at any other time in his career that he doesn't deserve to be the president of this great institution, Rutgers? I say to you that nobody has been able to come up with anything like that. When you consider the scrutiny that he's been put under, they should have.
No, Niger says that he has come up with something. So did Alex, too.
It's not a question of perception or the 3 words. It's definitely a question of substance. Lawrence represents the traditional do-good Albert Schweitzer-like liberal that believes, all right, that somehow blacks are here and whites are here. Consequently, we need to give blacks an extra handout. Consequently, we need to wipe away the SATs because blacks can't compete.
That's what you say. I hear no proof.
It is.
Where's the proof?
The proof is his words. He said, I want to get rid of the SATs.
No. That's not the proof. Those are the 3 words by which you seek to hang him. My God.
No. The words are that blacks are genetically inferior. What I seek to hang him by are his programs.
Can I finish my sentence?
Finish your sentence, although you interrupted me. But go ahead. But go ahead.
Okay. All right. We'll get it down to one at a time.
The point of the matter is that history has shown that when we jump to the attack and we hang people and we destroy people too quickly without being careful, without investigating, this is a man's entire life and career. It could have been yours, you know? And when I say proof, you go back to the same 3 words. That is not proof, my friend. And people as great as Jesus Christ were taken wrong by his words and suffered great.
Niger, does the president deserve another chance?
No, but understand why I say no. I'm not saying because the president is a racist in the traditional sense of David Duke or the KKK. He is not. Perhaps he's a more dangerous racist because he goes in the guise of doing good, okay? He goes in the guise of doing right for his black children who aren't up to snuff.
One question.
Let me tell you something.
More dangerous a racist than Leonard Jeffries?
Can I complete my sentence, please?
More dangerous a racist than
Hold on. Wait a second. I'm going to have to slow you down here. Just a minute. You finish your statement. I'll give you a chance to come back. Hold on in the audience here. Go ahead.
He's being playful. That doesn't bother me.
It's a healthy, I think this is a healthy discussion.
All right?
I think we're getting both sides.
This is a dialogue. This isn't a war, lady.
Okay.
All right, well, let me dialogue. Let me
hold up here. Hold up here.
I'm on your side of the war.
Listen.
That's what you said.
Hold. May I have the floor here? Okay. We are going to continue our discussion, and I think it's a very good discussion. We're hearing both sides, and everybody has a chance to speak. Those of you here in the studio audience, I know I have phone calls backed up, and we want to hear what you have to say, okay? Ladies and gentlemen, one at a time. Nigel, you finish. You finish.
First of all, I'm not one of those types that is going to get angry at Lawrence and excuse Jeffries. I have a problem with Jeffries, too. But Jeffries is not the issue, all right? The issue is this man implementing programs, even more so now because he's going to be under tremendous pressure to give out special handouts, special preferences, special affirmative action to blacks. All the time, deep down inside, believing he's giving those preferences out to be a good guy, but the bottom line is he's giving them out because he believes we can't compete on an equal playing field.
True.
I don't believe that. I believe that blacks can compete. I don't want a handout, all right? I think there's a new generation of young black Americans and Latino Americans and Asian Americans that are sick and tired of handouts and are ready to compete anywhere, anytime, any place on an equal playing field.
Hold on one second. Now, wait a minute. Robert, I want you to speak, but you know what I really wish? I wish that Francis Lawrence was here right now so that we could hear him speak. That would be really wonderful. Unfortunately, he's not here, and all we can do is debate perhaps what he is thinking or what he meant to say. Yes.
Since he's not here, that I think if he were here, and if you really thought about what he's done over the years, this man has been a fierce advocate for minority groups, and he is. When he made this speech and when he came up with these ridiculous words, he in his own mind may have been a little fouled up, but what he was thinking about at that point, what he was thinking about was advancing the interests of minority groups, not disadvantaging them. What we're hearing now is take away all the advantages that have been provided because we can play on an equal playing field. I agree with this gentleman 100% that they can play on an equal playing field.
Okay.
But I don't think that that shows that affirmative action is wrong.
Okay, I'm going to ask you to stop. I'm going to ask you to stop because actually what's happening here at Rutgers, is also happening, as you've heard, at UCLA, at Villanova, University of Massachusetts. It's a nationwide problem. I want to talk about that and more right after this. You stay with us. Be right back.
From white America, we want respect today.
I am totally for the resignation of Fran Lawrence, and I just think that this behavior should not be tolerated at all.
All right, campus racism. That is the issue today, and it focuses on Rutgers University and what has developed there. The issue focuses at that state university in New Jersey after its president made some comments that many students perceive as being racist. A number of students want him to step down. Others say that he should stay there. He should remain in his post. He has apologized, but people say that that is just not enough. Joining us on the phone right now, let's get to those calls. Kenny from Illinois, you're on News Talk Television. Kenny, we want to hear what you have to say. Go ahead.
Well, first off, I think that they have a very good reason to be upset about what the president said. I think it's totally out of line, and I think maybe it does give his true feelings. First off, I'm a 33-year-old white working male. I have never gone to college. It's not that I didn't have the opportunity. It's just that I chose a different route. I went into the service and so on. But I think what the people are saying on the panel today I think they're making good points. For one, I think the racism thing comes from the heart of people, and they speak before they think. And I think it just comes down to stinking thinking.
Kenny, what do you think it means? I mean, you heard the comment that the president made. What do you think it means? How do you interpret it personally?
Oh, I think my opinion, I think it can be interpreted one way. I think that the man has a problem with his thinking, his opinion of minorities. Being a white person, I just recently moved back to the Midwest from Los Angeles. I lived out there for 15 years. I experienced the riots, and I think there's a lot of people that are thinking there's just as many racist blacks as there are racist Hispanics. I think racism is in all of us because we live in such a country that we have a little bit of everything here. And until we get down to brass tacks and learn to live together, there's going to be these problems.
Okay, Kenny, thank you for your phone call from Illinois. Alex, let me go back to you. There are a number of black professors at Rutgers University that are siding with President Francis Lawrence. Why? Why do you think that's happening?
I mean, they feel that his track record does speak for himself. But I mean, the students, from our perspective, we feel he's just throwing us bones. It's just crumbs off the table. Because I mean, they added sections to they just built a new stadium. They're constructing these elaborate fields for sports activities, and yet the Africana Studies departments don't have doctorate programs. They're cutting back on the Puerto Rican, Caribbean, Hispanic Studies department. So I mean, we see a lot of inconsistencies as well.
Jim, do you think that the black professors are siding with the president for their own personal reasons?
Certainly, that happens in many cases. The black folk who are inside the system, the structure, usually seek to protect and justify this kind of behavior because they're on the inside. This is true in the Congress of the United States, in city government, or wherever you go. those blacks who are in there usually toe the line of the establishment.
Okay, I want to go to Melinda Murphy. Melinda also has some additional information. She's our information specialist, been working at this. What do you have?
I've actually been conversing with some people who are watching the show and who are writing in, talking
Oh, really?
to it.
That's good.
There's a lot of people who are, I mean, there's a lot of hot sentiment about this out there. I mean, the debate is just as furious on here as it is on
What are
our
they
floor.
saying, Melinda?
They're saying things such as the protesters were not within their rights. They were interceding with the others' rights. There are people who feel like the protesters are the ones who are hurting the other students there. Then people go back and say, yeah, but he needs to be fired because he's obviously a racist. It's a very back and forth kind of thing. It says, you see, you cannot apply two standards because one is popular and the other is not. Oh, yes, you can. And then it keeps going.
I noticed that there's reference there to the basketball game that was interrupted between Rutgers and University of Massachusetts. Alex, I want to go to that. What happened at that game now?
Let me tell you what happened at that game. Okay, as the week before, when we were told about what Lawrence said. Okay, all the students organized, all the student leaders of the various organizations organized, and we try to devise a strategy. We're like, how are we going to get that out in the open? We're trying to get it out and try to do something about it. Lawrence came around campus. He made statements apologizing to the students, and we were like, they're trying to sweep this one under the rug. They're just trying to get this one through, and they're going to try to just try to make the least possible noise about it. So really, we had the understanding at the UMass game that the basketball players were gonna protest the game. They didn't do that. The administration beat us to the punch and called their parents and told them, listen, don't do it. Think about your education, whatever. It was a desperation move.
It was a successful protest. You managed to stop that game
because we were counting on the basketball players to do it, and by halftime we realized that the basketball players weren't going to protest the movement.
Understood. And what is the mood right now? I mean, can we expect more protests from the students there? I mean, do we have to worry about violence?
No, not at all. We never took it there. We're not trying to blame anyone. We're not pointing fingers at white students. The only person that we're angry at is at President Lawrence. And the Board of Governors who appoints President Lawrence.
Okay. There are, as we said, problems at other campuses around the country. We are going to be hearing from some of those students and also comments from our panel here and members of our studio audience. We're going to take a break. And for those affiliates, unfortunately, if you're leaving us right now, thank you very much for joining us. And for the rest of our viewers, when we come back, a man who says that we are obsessed with race in our country. What do you think? We'll be back right after this. Stay with us.
Talk Television with Ernie Anastos.
All right, we're back once again. Racism in America. That is our subject today, and at the center of all of this right now is the president of Rutgers University, who is under fire right now for a comment that he made about minority students. Francis Lawrence noted in a speech that blacks score below the national average on their SATs because of their, quote, genetic hereditary background. That comment has set off a call right now for his resignation. He has apologized, but several protesters say that that is not enough. Let's go right to the telephones. And on the line right now is John Shapley, a graduate student at UCLA. He says that the incident at Rutgers is just another example of what is taking place in our country. John, why do you say that?
I say that because if you look at UCLA, if you look at Michigan State, if you look at Rutgers, or any place else in the country, we're finding the same mentalities promoted by college administrators. This is not isolated incidents. We must be looking at these incidents in a historical context and see that the legacy of slavery is still with us. The legacy of looking at people of color, people who look different than quote-unquote Americans, as white, male, Protestant males, what have you, are looked at as being different, and therefore are different reasons are given for their lack of success. The fact is, like even in this week's Newsweek, when you talk about genetic differences or hereditary differences, these in fact are not true. Reports have been given that there's more differences within a race in terms of genetics versus between individual people from one race to another. The fact is, the comments made by President Lawrence were very ignorant, very racist, and he must be held accountable for his actions, you know?
Yes, John, I also want you to talk about your situation out there as well, that, you know, you're a former student, or you're a graduate student out at UCLA.
Yes.
There is also a proposition that you know about that's being proposed to do away, to dismantle a lot of the affirmative action benefits, which would affect students primarily, and also hiring practices at colleges. You want to talk about that for a moment?
Yeah, that's a very hot issue out here. Affirmative action, along with this past Proposition 187, which was just passed in the November election. Very racist propositions, which basically say that blacks are so-called made it now, and that these race-based and race entrance exams are not needed anymore because of our stability in this country. But the fact is, when you look at the statistics of black people or Latino people, people of color anywhere, only a certain portion of our societies have so-called made it. The rest of us, the masses of us, are still suffering from this oppressive state. So we must look at facts here, look at figures, and understand that the majority of people are still not better off than they were in the 60s. In fact, we're doing worse. The majority of us are doing worse than they were economically, socially, politically than they were in the 60s. Yeah. So I mean,
that's an absolute.
Hold on, John, just a second. Nigel,
that is an absolute falsehood, and I've got to shake this young man up and wake him up. No, the civil rights revolution of the 1950s and 60s was the most successful social, peaceful revolution in the history of mankind. It is a testament to the strength of blacks, Asians, Latinos, and white Americans that turned this country around. Now, does racism still exist? Yes, of course it still exists. It is problematic. Sometimes it's institutional. But for this young man to actually believe in his mind that things are worse now than ever is a falsehood.
Now, let me
finish up your comment. Hold on, John. Stay on the line.
I have to challenge John. I have to challenge Rochelle. All right? They believe that what this man said, that blacks are genetically inferior, is wrong. They have to be consistent, because if they believe that what this man said, his premise, that blacks are genetically inferior, then they have to also believe that his programmatic changes that he wanted to make, like wiping away the SATs, his programs of affirmative action, also say the same thing, because they address the same wrong belief that we are genetically inferior.
All right, John, you're up now. Go ahead. Let's listen to John. Go ahead, John. Wait a second. Go ahead.
The fact is that genetics are not the root cause for implementing affirmative action policy. No? So the fact is that cannot even be comparable in terms of a person's genetic inferiority compared to the need for affirmative action programs. When we're talking about affirmative action, we're talking about whole communities' unavailability to access the system, to access advantages.
Let me give you an example of what I'm talking about.
Okay, John, thank you. Stay on the line. Just listen to this.
John,
Go ahead,
please listen, because I want this to sink in. In New York City, there's a sergeant's exam that police officers have to take, all right? The fact is, blacks and Latinos failed a sergeant's exam. They protested. The Guardians, the Black Benevolent Association, protested, sued the city of New York, won their case. They took the test. They reorganized it. A black person reorganized the test. They gave the test again to blacks and Latinos.
Right.
Blacks failed disproportionately. Latinos passed disproportionately. So what did Ed Koch, who was mayor, and incidentally is against affirmative action, do? He implemented a race norm. He said that for whites to pass and become sergeants, you have to get 75%.
Yes, that's right.
For Latinos to pass, you have to get 68.5%. For blacks to pass, you have to get 65%. That is racist. It tells my children, it tells your children, it tells your children that they can't compete with your children and your children. And that is just as racist, it is just as dangerous, and a lot of people who implement affirmative action have that at the core of their beliefs, that blacks cannot compete.
Nigeria is overlooking the fact that racism is built into the economy of this country, that it is deeply institutionalized. It has nothing to do with your brain cells or your genetics. It has a lot to do with economic discrimination,
Opportunities,
in the unions,
jobs,
in corporate America,
all of those
in
things
your educational
that allow you the opportunity to advance.
You have structured racism in this country, and I agree with the other speaker that it has gotten, in my lifetime, I've seen an intensification of racism, and the civil rights movement of the 1960s did not address economic racism.
Okay.
It never did.
I've got to get to some of these calls because I really am backed up and I want to give somebody an opportunity to get in here. Jonathan from New York, you're on the line. Jonathan, we're listening to you. Go ahead.
Hello, yes, my question is directed towards Mr. Levin. I'm curious to know what his purpose or what he's trying to achieve here with his comments, because only thing I see...
self-defense.
Well,
when somebody accuses me of doing something wrong...
We'll let the professor answer. Go ahead.
Okay.
When somebody accuses me of doing something wrong and then demands recompense, money, privileges, on the basis of something I or my group allegedly did, it is necessary to stand up and say in self-defense, I did not do it. The harm is not mine. The damage is not my fault.
But you're
that is
benefiting from
Quiet.
it. You are benefiting from it. You are benefiting from
That's
it.
also untrue.
You are benefiting
Yeah,
from
you're
it.
repeating yourself.
How is he benefiting?
He's benefiting from the unearned privilege of his white skin color in this country.
That's what I'm saying is not true. That's why I'm here.
Okay, let me pick up a comment.
I have a comment. Who makes these standardized tests? We are equal no matter what. It's the person that makes these tests. Basically, the people that make these tests are not coming from the same background that we are.
That's completely irrelevant.
And that's
there are
what
ways...
No, that is
okay,
relevant.
Martians
try to answer a question.
Okay, Martians make the test.
No, you make the test.
Okay, I made the test.
You make
and
the test.
having made the test personally, the test was validated on a very large population. Blacks who can't answer certain questions and whites who can't answer those questions do exactly the same in academic success. It doesn't matter who makes it. Look, if I give you an arithmetic test, if I give you an arithmetic test, does it matter what color I am?
If we have an equalized test, you will see that most minorities are higher than most white people.
That's simply not true. And look, they've done many studies.
Then we'll see.
They've done many studies in which blacks have administered these tests to black children.
What do you
and the
think?
Black children
What's your
do
comment?
worse.
This is a heated discussion today. We'll be back with more right after this. All right, back in the news today, a racial comment that has been made at the campus of Rutgers University has set off a firestorm of protest there. Right in the middle of this thing is the president of New Jersey's largest and only state university. He is trying to convince the students and a number of politicians and other people that what he said, his racial comments, were misunderstood. The latest incident right now continues to stir up the country in terms of racism in America. What is going on? Joining us right now is Paul Haughton, editor-in-chief of Discover magazine. He says that our society is too obsessed with race and race-related topics. Tell us why you think that.
Yeah, it's obvious that we are. That's why we're having discussions like this. I mean, it's unfortunately one of the worst aspects of human nature that we try to divide people into us versus them, that we unfortunately judge people by superficial characteristics, in other words, what they look like. In order to, feel identified with a group or not, we have to rise above this, because what scientists know is that these superficial differences on the outside don't correlate to anything that's going on inside.
But why has it gotten worse? It seems that we are now separating ourselves. I mean, we're creating our own history. We have our own neighborhoods. We have our own pockets. We have everything that belongs to us, and we are now separating ourselves rather than trying to integrate and rather than trying to understand one another. Why has it gotten that way?
I don't know that opportunists take advantage of situations. We have people here who are taking advantage of this president of a major institution in the wrong way. And in the end, it's going to hurt them. It's not going to help.
What I think is, I don't know that it's necessarily gotten worse. I think it's gotten better. I think what's happened now is there's more discussion about this. There are more people in public positions that can say things that get a lot of attention, as well they should. Because,
but there seems to be new definitions of race.
It's not really dialogue.
Why are there, like, I was alluding to new definitions of race. Why?
Why are there new definitions?
Yeah.
Because for the first time, people are confronting this in a public way. We used to sweep these things under the rug and not talk about these things. It's good that these things come out. Unfortunately, a lot of people still harbor racist notions. We should discuss them. That's the only way we're going to change things.
Unfortunately, he's right. There is more discussion, but it's usually yelling between extremists as opposed to reasonable people.
You mean like what's happening here today?
Yeah.
Are we, wait a minute. It's a good question. Are we helping or are we contributing to the problem by what we're doing here today?
You know, if you look at all
seriously,
these...
I want you to evaluate it, okay? You just came in on this discussion, and you've been listening to it. What do you think about the level of discussion that we've had about this subject here on this program?
I think it's helping. I mean, there's no doubt there's going to be a little yelling and screaming. Yelling and screaming is okay.
Yeah.
The world would be a bland place if no one did that. We should get these things out on the table. My point is, though, and people should know in this room, the scientific community universally thinks there's no difference inside our bodies.
You know it, and you should stop spreading this sort of misinformation on television. You are perfectly aware.
You're a minority of one going around to every
Rothman and Schneiderman did a survey of 660 educators, the majority of whom accepted not only the racial differences, the majority of whom accepted the probability that these differences are genetic in origin when polled anonymously. Cavalli-Swartz's latest book indicates unambiguously that there are genetic differences between the major human groups.
I have a challenge for Levin. I have a real challenge for Levin. Because let's take this absurd premise, and it is an absurd premise, that blacks are genetically inferior.
Different.
Then is that not a complete justification for the most radical form of affirmative action? Oh, yes, it is.
Okay.
Let me tell you why. Let me tell you why. Because, hey, hold on. Let me tell you why. Because if a monkey, all right, were to get 60% on a mathematical exam, that damn monkey's a genius, okay? So if indeed this absurd premise, and again, it is an absurd premise that blacks are genetically inferior. Say, let's qualify it. Let's say we're 80% intelligence of whites, all right? Then if we get 80% on an exam, we should get an A+.
No. The correct inference is that if
Explain that.
Okay. The correct inference is that if blacks don't do as well in things like college and the business world, here is the explanation. It's not the fault of whites, it's the fault of God or evolution.
No, but then we need some radical affirmative action. But then we need some radical affirmative action to put black, because I tell you, if that genetically inferior black, my God, gets 90%, that's better than a white getting 100%.
Let's follow through up on this. Hold up 1 second. Let's follow up. What do you want to say?
First, I'd like to say that racism is in fact a crime, and we need to speak about racism. We need to engage.
This is what your button says right there. You see that?
That's
Racism
right.
is a crime. Where'd you get that
is a
button?
crime. It's developed and perpetrated by the Coalition to End Racism in Construction. And we're here based in New York.
Let's hear from you. What
My
do you
name
want
is
to say?
Quabla Banks. I work with Harlem Fight Back.
Okay.
And like I said, racism is a crime. Racism premates American society. In fact, you have a racist up here. And I think that we have to engage in racism. We have to engage in a dialogue about racism and address this. The president made a statement that was racist beyond a doubt. It's a sad commentary when you have an educator, a president of a university at a higher level institution talking about the genetic inferiority of black people, when in fact, if you deal with the actual facts, black people represent only 12% of the population, yet they're responsible for over 60% of the inventions.
What?
This reminds me of the Cario Symposium.
Where did you get that from?
This reminds me of the Cario Symposium in 1986 when the intelligentsia said that black people did not have a language to facilitate mathematics.
The professor wants to ask you a question about what you're saying. What do you want to ask?
Did you get this from the patent office?
No, several sources.
Where did you get this
One, the patent office, two.
Doesn't know the race of anybody who submits a patent application, and they should.
What is that? What is that?
So that's
what do you have in your hand there? Is this what you're basing this
No,
on?
they don't.
It
Not
says
only
here,
this.
black inventors and their inventions. Now, where does this come from? What is it?
Listen, black inventors and their inventions. This is also a
Isaac Newton
manifestation
was black.
of racism. When you know that people are categorically denied their rights, when there are no forums to present black people. Everybody present ideas that black people have developed. Everybody here benefits from African genius and generosity.
Okay, hold on.
What I like to say...
Why don't you just respond to what you said, because I do have to move on. Yes, go ahead.
Where did you get this figure? What did blacks invent that is usually credited to whites?
Lawnmowers.
Listen, the traffic light.
No, that's no.
I mean, it's a long list.
We're going to get off, but your point is well taken. We're going to get off on this. Thank you very much for what you said. All right, I want to get to a call. Hold on. Do we still have that telephone? Do I still have that call? Okay, we don't have that call. All right, tell you what. We got a lot more to talk about. We'll be back with more right after these messages. Stay with us. We're back. We're live. Let's go to the phones. Herbert from Ohio, you're on the air. Herbert, go ahead. Hello, Herbert. Is Herbert on the line? Hello? Okay, I guess we have a problem with that. I want to go back to you, Alex. Before we finish up here, you have, I understand, the students have collected a list of demands. Perhaps you can't give us the entire list, but tell us about this list and what you're trying to accomplish with it.
Well, I mean, really, our first demand is that Lawrence steps down. I really don't want it to make it look like a list, or we don't want it to make it look like a list that we're selling out, because we really don't want to give anybody the impression that we can be bought. But, you know, we want to understand, though, that we have to be, you know, that there are reparations, that we demand reparations for his comments, which his resignation is at the forefront. Okay, I also want to allude to the point of racism, and that it still does exist, and it is extremely pervasive, because when we were at the UMass game, okay, all the students that were sitting down on the court, okay, which were the only black and minority students that were at the stadium at the time. Okay, there were people out, you know, adults, 35-year-olds.
It got a little nasty there for a while, didn't it?
Nasty. They were called. Okay, they were yelling, "Nigger, nigger, get out of here, Spicks. Why don't you go back to your country? All we got to do is throw a banana on the court, and they'll just chase it right out of the stadium." Okay, so you know that hurt us, but you know we stood our ground. We said, let's not even react to that. Let's not even address it, because we're here for a totally different reason.
Okay, I want to go to the phones. Joey from Kansas, you're on the air. Go ahead, Joey.
Yes. Number one, Professor or President Lawrence has to be held accountable for his actions.
Okay.
I mean, you can't get around that. But to Dr. Levin, number one, I want you to understand one thing. We as black people, when we came to America, and I'm a 42-year-old black man with 3 daughters in college, supporting them with no help from the government, okay? I want you to know that we came here, we couldn't speak English, but we adapted to your society. We came here, we knew nothing about the math system that you had set up, but we adapted to your society. There's one thing that you can never, ever say about a black person. We are genetically inferior.
It's not your society, Joey. It's our society. We helped create it, too. Number one. Let me say this, too. Paul Robeson, who was an alumnus of Rutgers University, at the turn of the century, when there was overt, covert, every other type of racism you could name existed, Paul Robeson was a Rhodes Scholar. Paul Robeson was an actor. He was a classical singer, and he was top 10 in his class. The man was brilliant. There are thousands upon thousands of black Americans out there that are successful. We have a thriving black middle class that is doing very well. What we need to do, we need to stop talking about affirmative action and other divisive issues and look at the success of the black middle class and those that are doing well, and teach that success model to those of us that are not doing
okay.
it.
Got you. Go ahead.
I want to say to students in general, be really careful, Alex, be really careful of affirmative action. You know, it's a double-edged sword. It can benefit you, but at the same time, it can really push you down and put you in a place. The truth is that there's lots of minorities in this world. The minorities are the majority. It is all of us. There is only a small select group who are really reaping these benefits that everybody is talking about. Be careful.
The demands.
Are we going backwards here?
The demands are what's wrong. The demand should not be to fire the president of Rutgers University. The proper demand is to bring an end to racism, not to do it over this man's body because he said a couple of words that were wrong. It's good that it inspired this dialogue, and as this gentleman said, it's good that we talk about this problem, but let's not bury the career of a man who has been good to minorities over the years.
Okay, let's try to get some comment just before we hang up here. Go ahead.
Everything he's done to this point.
Go ahead. Go right ahead.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Talking about genetic differences.
That's a good reason to fire you.
That's all there is. Genetic differences. We're talking about minorities, blacks, Hispanics. I haven't heard anybody say anything about people. We're all just people. Everyone's different. What about the white people? What about the white people?
Professor says that that's not true. What do you mean it's not true? What do you mean it's not true?
We all belong to different groups. We all feel strongly about the groups that we...
Humans.
See,
what about the white people? Excuse me. It's my turn now. I've waited a long time for this.
Wait a second. I only have 20 seconds here. Go ahead. Make your final comment.
What about the white people that didn't do so hot on the SATs?
Excuse me?
What about the white people that didn't do so hot on the SATs? There's no focus on them. We couldn't have all done great.
Okay, tell you what, I gotta go. I really wish I had more time, and I hope this discussion has helped a little bit, okay? Let's keep the dialogue open. We really want that. I'm Ernie Anastos on the News Talk channel. Thank you for joining us, and remember, if it's in the news, we are talking about it. Have a good day. See you again tomorrow.